Last time, yeah, we popped off. How did you manage to confirm this? The witness deserves credit for calling attention to the hole in the window. I was equipped to use that opening to test this with a relatively practical method. I see. You checked the windows from the outside with your drone. It took some time to program it to maneuver correctly. I instructed it to circle the building at the appropriate altitude, taking photos of the rooms inside. That's how I discovered there was a fourth room. Astonishing! What was hidden inside? Keep in mind that a thorough investigation isn't feasible with this method. What's possible to discern is that this room is similar to the others on the lower floor. The pattern in this room consists of hands, and the text on the pillar reads, Non-maleficence. Completing the 5 senses and the 4 pillars of ethics, just like I thought. And Mr. Kova? Did you find him? The room wasn't as empty as the others. It featured some furnitures like beds, chairs, and tables. Most of them were equipped with what appeared to be restraints. I don't want to imagine what those were for. Maybe Mr. Kova's not dead. No person or dead body was visible inside the room. There was a circular hole in the glass, however. Similar to the one we found on this... Oh. You don't mean to tell me. You threw the real Mr. Kova out of the window? Not you two. I can neither confirm nor deny that possibility. Of course, I immediately tried to send my drone to search the sea below. I didn't locate any body, though I was able to locate 3 other data points floating in the water. Oh. This is a lot to take in at once. Well, please, tell us your findings. I will have you assess their relevance, then. The first item my drone spotted was an electric drill. A common household variant, although on the larger end. Next, there was a TV remote. It appeared to be an older model based on its design, but it's difficult to say for certain. Lastly, a glass cutter with a diamond tip. Likely expensive. There could easily be more. The sea is a difficult place to investigate. It's statistically very fortunate I found as much as I did. Our man just dumped all the evidence into the sea. Pragmatic, I guess. This has to be how we got rid of Mr. Kova's body as well. But it doesn't matter. Because the mere existence of this room confirms my theory. I will analyze the signature for the sake of thoroughness. It does appear to only support one logical conclusion. Of course. Meanwhile, we will accept what you found into evidence. Oh boy. Non-maleficence. Dispose tools. Okay, that's all one court record item. Outstanding job, detective. I imagine not many police investigators could have matched that. I was able to verify it first, but it was the defendant who presented this hypothesis. We can objectively call it a tie. I'll take it. I almost feel like I got robbed. I certainly won't complain. We'll take a tie after losing for so long through this whole case. Definitely curious how the witness will excuse any of this away. It may be more appropriate to call him the main suspect at this point, indeed. That goddamn drone. Alright. No shot, I guess. I give up. You give up? Do you mean to say? Yep, you got me. Grats. This isn't just another one of your jokes, I hope. Leah, please. We're taking this seriously here. This isn't a fight I can win anymore. Hard to compete when Heisenberg over here keeps dealing you all the good stuff. You admit it, then? You admit that you are the murderer? Sure am. Let me just properly introduce myself now that there's no point in hiding it anymore. What? Huh? Name's Junior Zanuck Drill. Dennis in training. Oh, what are those faces? Smile. Let me see those teeth. Say ah. Please spare what few teeth I have left. Impossible. Really, it can't have been right. So there it is. You really are working for Dr. Cavity. Yep. That whole Kova then was a complete lie. Shocker, I know. Order. Please remain calm. Mr. Drill, why in the world did you do all of this? I do owe you an explanation, I suppose. No worries, I will do a proper confession. Got nothing left to lose now. Go ahead. We will at least listen to what you have to say. Oh, goody. Means we have to contradict you. No music? My name is Junior Zanuck Drill. I killed Mr. Garn, like you figured. It was an attempt to divert suspicion away from Aurelia Chase. That's right, I was her accomplice. Oh, okay, that was a good swerve. You got caught killing Miss Holden. So I needed to commit a murder she'd have an alibi for. I would have never done it if I'd known she was planning to throw me under the bus like this. Alright, yep, there's the game. I'm your accomplice? What the hell are you thinking? You're my... Only pure and wholesome thoughts, I assure you. I have no idea what this is meant to mean. You're surprised? It's the only thing it had to be. Oh, shut up. Has everyone forgotten that Aurelia has already been proven the culprit? It appears she possessed enough intelligence to at least not pick the most painfully obvious accomplice. As I've been saying, this second incident was bound to be a desperate distraction by her. You can't take this testimony seriously. Lily just confirmed he's a murderer. You got it backwards, liar. I've already confessed to murder. Why would I still be lying about anything? That's what I'd like to know. What's the point of roping me into this? You did betray me, and don't think you're walking out of here scot-free. I might have nothing left to lose, but there's still something I can gain. The satisfaction. A shocking revelation indeed. Nevertheless, this trial is about the wrongful death of Mrs. Holden. In the end, it's not clear how this witness could be liable for that. I'm not an accomplice, that's just what he's saying now out of pure spite. Let me cross-examine this bastard and disprove this nonsense. Oh, well, that is your prerogative. If you want to dispute this confession, I won't stop you. I knew there was going to be a catch, but this is something else. He must really hate you. Put a lot of effort into framing me. Not too surprising he'll take what he can still get at this point. That makes him either a poor loser or really dedicated. Well, no points for guessing whether this confession is just full of lies. Nah. This one seems legit. I'm not trying the mood for jokes. No joke. That's finally his real name, at least. Guess there was no point in hiding it anymore. At least we know what to call our enemy now. Drill, huh? Even though we got him, he's still fully dedicated to dragging me down with him. I'll have to figure out how he framed me and put an end to his lies. Alright. Let's see what we can even do with this. Possibly the only truthful thing you've said today. Yes, murder's not lie to not get caught. Who are you to call me out on that? At least I have the decency to come clean when I get caught. We're still waiting for your confession, liar. I did not kill her. It should be obvious now that was all part of your frame-up. I did not kill her. It's not true. And here I thought I was pathetic. Now look at you. The only thing that's obvious is that I chose a terrible person to work with. Here's me trying to bail you out. And that's how you thank me. We're basically strangers. Why would we even be working together? So cold, liar. After all we've been through, you just deny it like this. Come on, you basically proved it all earlier in your little advised attempt to throw me under the bus. Both of us were Dr. Leeds' shady goons. Subordinates, I mean. I wasn't aware of his true nature back then. Yeah, that's about what I'd claim if anyone asked. We've done some nasty stuff, haven't we? The JP Corporation doesn't exactly offer any pretty jobs. You're saying both you and Miss Chase were part of that murderous organization? Those were the days. I was still kind of a trainee back then, but Lai was basically running the HR department. I'm not sure how to feel about you describing such a group like it's a company. Anything can be turned into a business. That's capitalism for you. That's a good line. Anyway, you really should realize it's pointless to deny this, Lai. After everything you already admitted to earlier. The eerie thing about that is the way he just described that. Lai was basically running the HR department. It's like not, legitimately not a stretch to think of it that way. Like it's like it's what am I thinking? Essentially what she was doing was recruiting people to participate in studies for a friend of the family who was like a low-key psychology professor in her mind. It's in a weird way, not even if she didn't know what was going on under the surface, she was kind of running the HR department. Can't argue against this. It's too easy for him to put me in a bad light. What was it we supposedly did here, according to you? Alright. Oh, the idea wasn't to get caught? The original idea was to not murder anyone at all. Well, as far as I was concerned, at least. Please, you already admitted we were after this documentation of certain fun, happy times. The plan was that you'd search the office while I checked the lower floor. I tricked Mrs. Holden to give me a little tour, then gave her the slip. Not sure why everyone is so trusting of doctors, really. Then I had to learn that Lai completely botched things. You should have seen my face. Hold up, that makes no sense. How would you have even known about what was going on upstairs? The ceiling is soundproof, no? He clearly knew everything that's happened in this trial. He must have had some way to listen in. Heh, I guess you never figured out my trick for that. At least one thing that annoying drone didn't find. But I'll leave that part up to your imagination. Should have known I wouldn't get anything for free. Anyway, my main issue is obviously with the claim that I killed Mrs. Holden. Why should we buy that you didn't kill her when you're confirmed to have killed 2 other people? You don't have to take it from me, and take it from the bullet we found in her chest. Besides, didn't your story also put me on the lower floor? How could I have influenced events in the study from there at all? Yes, that more or less sums up the problems of anyone else being the killer. I'll have to find a way to counter these, but which do I focus on? I'd be my gun that fired the shot. It cannot be done from outside this study. Start from the top. Think the rifling marks prove I killed her? That's hardly the case. After all, you could have easily... Rig my gun, swap my gun. Doesn't seem to be any obvious penalty path here. Aurelia and Neelan. Swap my gun. Please, you just secretly swapped my gun and used it yourself. That's desperate. Oh, sure. That sounds absolutely plausible and doable. I'm on the hook now. Jay's got a couple minor issues with it. Let's see. Okay, we'll go like... Before the murder, didn't saw back. Oh my god. We'll come back to that. That's a lot of statements. I'm the one who planned all this. You can't possibly justify that. Hey, won't argue it was pretty desperate of you. Ideally, they wouldn't have found the key at all. It never hurts to prepare an excuse, eh? Really have to wonder when you came up with it. Swallowing the key to eventually frame me. For it? Wow. And just wow. And why didn't I present that excuse immediately when it was discovered? Well, I pulled a bit of a stunt for that disguise. You had to figure out what happened to me first. Imagine if you'd gone and accused your dentist immediately. Yeah, that would have been a cool story moment. I just so happened to visit the dental office you work at the day before to enable that idea. Good effort, but we both know that wasn't a coincidence. Dentist visit was merely a front for our final mission briefing. It was always gonna happen. Briefing? What was being discussed there? Our plan for the next day, of course. We had to confirm some details in person. I mean, try discussing a crime like that in a messenger of mails. What could possibly go wrong? That's the real reason I scheduled her appointment only one day beforehand. And why didn't you mention that she was your accomplice framing you sooner? Hey, I technically did insist I was being framed the whole time. Couldn't exactly get into the nitty-gritty of the accomplice thing without, you know, giving away that I'm a murderer myself, which wasn't ideal. I had to play the game on her terms. Well, I guess that makes sense. Gotta keep spinning this story to make as much sense as he needs to make. It seems harder to argue against this time than it should be. It's his word against yours. But what's really backing him up is the case that's been built against you. Victoria already made you look like a murderer. All they have to do is say you framed him instead of the other way around. And what I'll have to do is point out how he killed Mrs. Holden as well. Feels like the right call. Maybe some things you theorized earlier will come in handy here. There are still a lot of things that don't make sense about this. We'll just have to slowly chip away at it, huh? We know how he planted the key in his rough position. That sort of narrows the options. Things should fall into place one by one from here. Just keep up the pressure until you spot an explanation. Optimistic, but I managed to get this far, I guess. I don't know if I want to go down the gun route. Can't be done from outside the study. You think you're off the hook because you weren't inside the room? Couldn't be more wrong. Can't roll out that you... I mean, there's still the poison. Shot it from outside the room? If there's some way to shoot a bullet from outside the room, this isn't an argument. Do it, ladies. I dare you to secret passage me again. We were right the first time. Might as well keep going. Some evidence that the room had been tampered with. 2 unusual holes in the floor. Perhaps you're able to do something with those from below. Like what? Shoot a bullet through them? Oh yeah, that'd be the idea. Kind of an issue that neither of those holes fully penetrated the lower floor then. 2 half measures sadly can't be added up to a finished product. Unless we're doing math. Hope we can agree not to do math. Doesn't necessarily mean you had no chance to interact with them. We presented a theory about the holes themselves being used to propel a bullet earlier. If you just heated up the ceiling from below, a timed explosive might also do the trick. I remember that. I also remember the part where Lady Umbrella with the hair shot it down immediately. Because of, you know, a minor issue that I couldn't have covered up those holes after the fact. There's another much more telling discrepancy, of course. Alright. That's only true if she was shot before she collapsed. Even considering witness statements, there's still some room for doubt about that. When she was lying flat on the floor, she could have very much been shot from there. Oh, okay. Forgot people randomly collapse for absolutely no reason. Wait, that's just me whenever I reflect on my life choices. Even if she did that, it's nothing I could have predicted. That's unfortunately a good point. Can't really go down that route unless I can figure out a way he made her drop down without a shot. Well, or change the angle of the bullet somehow. Oh god. All the statements are added now. Poison. Shooting her might have been difficult for you, but there's still my poison theory from earlier. We'd even be in a room with such a remote method during doing the actual work. Simply gave her the poison while she was downstairs with you, and she died all on her own later. The poison theory, of course. How could I forget it? Or maybe because there were some major issues with it back then that would apply to me too. Never said it was necessarily that kind of poison. You very much implied it. I'm sure everything else would make even less sense. Who am I to question you, though? You're a bigger expert than me. It's said that poison is a woman's weapon, after all. My humblest apologies. I promise I'll never mansplain again. Oh, how I hate you. I guess this is my cue to suggest a better idea if I have any. Which is the physical form of the poison? What should I get? Oh, God. Why are we making choices here? This is so much. Stomach is empty. Liquid. How much time should I say it takes for the poison to take effect? Solid liquid gas, slow acting, fast acting. Slow acting. What should I consider a liquid poison that is slow acting? I'm really curious what you think this changed. Well, not really. No matter what drug you pick, you can't avoid the issues. Alright. That's a thing we can do there. Maybe it didn't have to be perfect, just close enough. Close enough to make her collapse exactly during her struggle with you? Sure. And if you knew her schedule down to the minute, how would that work? Bodies are different. Poisons usually have quite a range in which they take effect. Someone toxic like you would probably last a bit longer than the average. What were really the consequences if she wouldn't have died at the time? Maybe it didn't matter to you whether it worked or not. Dead is dead. It's the difference between framing or not, which you make sound like it was kind of the point? Well, you say that whole key thing was just a distraction. Sure. I mean, I would have been so great for me if she had collapsed during the auction instead. Probably would have led to a sweep of the building, with me being stuck on the second floor. Lead to me being arrested on the spot. Flawless. Why didn't I think of that? It's right that it's a bit much, especially even if you're willing to leave some things to chance. Come to think of it, what actually was his plan for getting up the lower floor? Clearly he couldn't have meant to get stuck there. He'd end up suspiciously absent. You have to look at that from another angle. Okay, so... let's get the statements for the other path. Had to be my gun. Alright. That's totally the case. After all, you could have easily, rigged my gun. Like my gun fired doesn't prove I was the one that pulled the trigger. It's possible that you sabotaged my gun to go off. Did you stop and think about when I would have done that? There's plenty of time when I was in the dentist chair. Couldn't really keep tabs on my stuff then. Now there's a solid, definitely not desperate theory. But sadly, that makes about as much sense as arguing for time travel as an alibi. What's the problem with that? Do you know what a timer does? Don't you play any more games with me. I basically need future scientists some magical ability to know what to set the timer to. And no, knowing Mrs. Holden's schedule wouldn't have been enough. Would have had to know the exact time you would be aiming your gun at her. How'd I even know you'd be aiming your gun at her at all? I time traveling now. I may be fair, but you're kind of mischaracterizing the mechanism I meant to suggest. Oh, shoot. Well, no, don't. I thought I went with the most realistic option. By all means, tell me what you were really trying to concoct. Instead of being time, the mechanism could have been impact triggered. What if it was set off to go for a certain movement or pressure? By tying it to something like that, you'd avoid the whole timing issue. What would this movement be that would only happen at the very moment you aimed at her? Must sound really good to you in theory, but it's still the same issue in practice. Yeah, that wouldn't really get us out of killing her if we, like, took her hand out, put the finger on the trigger, and then impact sensor went kaboom. Impact trigger. What's wrong with that? The issue is that I have no idea what you're doing. How would I have known you'd pull your gun out then and only then? And actually aim it at the victim instead of in the air. What if you pulled it out as a test earlier and it went off? Fun thoughts for sure, but kinda ruins the point. There are too many reasons that could have gone wrong. That could have gone wrong. Maybe okay, well, don't. Alright. Remote control. What if it was a remote controlled shot? Could activate it exactly when how would you know? Alright. We can't get out of that. Stole your gun before the murder. Then what? Plead guilty to find out. Or just let me finish the sentence before you complain. Both are valid. Unless you already have any issues. So far, so good. Go on for now. Okay, so we can raise issues here. Realistically, I don't see any way around this. Shot from a horizontal angle. Liquid slow-acting poison. Gas. Fast-acting? What do you consider a gaseous poison that's fast-acting? The fast-acting poison, timing would clearly be less of an issue, especially if the effect was basically instant. Instant gratification. That opens up a whole other can of worms. Victim was still fine after fetching the knife. I just hand her the poison to swallow later? That's still a timing issue in the end, no? Besides, that'd mean the poison must have been brought to the study. Yeah, I don't think so. Poison gas could quickly dissipate. There wouldn't be anything left to find. True. That's exactly why it'd be such a pain to use. But you can think yourself through the logistics of that. Can't really carry gas in your bare hands. Can't slip it into someone's pocket. You need a dispenser of some sort. What is the knife that means that deployed the poison? We'll try it, but... Can you really say it couldn't be missed, though? Like I said, at least the poison itself would probably vanish from the scene quickly. Do I need to spell it out again? First of all, how do you picture I convinced her to do anything like that? At least this gas within a closed room. You'll love it. What would I even have said if it was? Knockout gas? Just stinky gas? No, that would have made it sound like a good idea to do it for her. They simply pretended it was harmless. And how would I have sold her that? Sold to her that there was even a point to her doing it. There's no convince and take here. It's even dumber, of course, because even if the poison vanished, the container would not. Nothing like that was found at the scene. Zilch. Not wrong. You need to carry gas, you need some kind of sealed, airtight space. To attack this, I'd have to show there was in fact something like that, and We'd also have to explain how we could convince her to unleash it in the study. Maybe we try the knife. Fuck, it is the knife. You're right. There's no feasible way for you to poison the victim. Though conceded a point, Emma dreamed. It was more accurate to say that there was no reason for you to do anything. Because you knew that Mrs. Holden was going to poison herself. Then what have I got to do with it? That's one hell of a weird suicide attempt you're suggesting here. I'm confused, Miss Chase. Why would the victim have done something like poison herself? Oh, she intended none of it. Recall what happened to the other people who fell victim to the curse of this place. The gifts the Reaper left behind were all set up as dangerous traps. Wasn't any different for this poison. You didn't have to do anything. Simply made use of a trap left behind by your former boss. All right. Oh, sorry, I was looking at the court record. I can leave work to my boss. You wish that's how it worked. Where was this poison, then? There's no place that makes sense. Oh, it's been with us for a while. A sealed container that Mrs. Holden opened at the scene. Look no further. I don't see how there's any room to store poison in this knife. Recall that this knife originally came with a sheath. A sheath that's just a little bit longer than the knife. Found a piece of paper hidden inside, but that hardly took up all the space. There would still be some room for air, or rather... My goodness, you're right. Should be clear what I'm getting at. Poison gas was stored inside this sheath, with the knife acting as a lid. Only draw this weapon if you are truly prepared to kill. Okay, that was the line I was looking for. Yeah, that's just about the thing that man would find amusing. The moment anybody drew this knife, they'd be basically killing themselves. So I suppose you're saying that this is the explanation for Mrs. Holden's excessive sweat. That's right. Mrs. Holden brought the poison knife to the scene, intending to stab me with it. And when she drew it, the freed gas ascended right into her face. So instead of stabbing me quietly, she gave herself away with a caw. Ah, that would explain. Managed to keep herself conscious long enough to struggle with me briefly, but the sound of the shot made her pause. Then the effects of the poison settled in and she collapsed. Another brainless idea. How much space would be left inside that sheath, precisely? It's categorically impossible for a lethal dose of gas to fit it in there. Let her know, Dr. Hellinger. It's not entirely falsifiable. That's not what I told you to say. I will take for granted you didn't expect me to lie. Certain nerve agents can have dramatic effects even with minimal exposure. Notably, the symptoms of this type of poisoning commonly do include coughing and sweating. Well, that certainly makes it appear like things are starting to add up. I don't quite understand how this involves the witness. As you said, it would be much more likely to be a leftover from Dr. Lee, like the other trap. As we already established, Mr. Drill was an associate of the man in question. He's not denying this. Not too far-fetched that he learned about this deadly setup from him at some point. Knowledge is power. If he knew, he could have very well planned around it. Very bold, but... planned around what? What do you actually think I did here? As I claimed earlier, Mrs. Holden had her own plan to get rid of me. If you knew about that plan, you could have manipulated it accordingly. Perhaps you suggested to her to use that knife, even. I mean, yeah, don't use her gun. Take this knife instead. Because she did leave her gun downstairs. Well. Did you know that stage 4 cancer can be cured with certain herbs? You can take it from me. I'm wearing a doctor's coat. I guess you're getting at me having no proof. Despite the autopsy and all. Wow, good job picking up on that, Leah. That's the rub with unknown poisons you made up out of thin air. There ain't no way to know for sure. There is no merit in debating the plausibility of this to begin with. And if you had evidence, it would be inconsequential for the case. The involvement of this witness would still be painfully negligible. It is true that this would be mostly the fault of Dr. Lee. There are group projects I contributed more to, and that's saying something. Let's be real. If she really wanted to murder someone with that knife, that's on her. She had it coming. Not that it matters. You had the bright idea to shoot her anyways. The conclusion does appear to be that it was still Miss Chase who ultimately shot the victim. Furthermore, Aurelia would have shot the victim before the latter collapsed. We've been over this often enough. Face it, liar. I took my L. It's time to take yours. No, I don't think I'll have to concede anything. It's possible the victim was poisoned, and it's possible you knew it would play out this way. That's all I need to show to get started on dismantling your arguments. Oh, sure, because this explains all the issues with your accusation. I'm shaking in my boots, literally trembling. Beginning to grasp the bigger picture. They managed to shoot Mrs. Holden. He knew about the poison, so he could be very sure she'd collapsed during her attack on me. With the first domino toppled, it would be possible to overcome his other arguments. There's 2 points you can make that I shot Mrs. Holden. First, the fact that the bullet had rifling marks from my gun. And second, that it doesn't appear possible anyone else could have shot her in the locked room. Just a couple of trivial issues. You should be able to solve this. Oh, I'm sure these can be called anything but trivial. Probably gonna have to think like an obsessed lunatic to solve these. That won't stop me at this point, though. He's bound to argue back. If I say anything wrong, I might have to start over. Now, with that in mind... which of these problems do I tackle first? Rifling marks on my gun, or holding a shot in the locked room? Oh boy. Alright, let's think here. First, let's actually look at this new evidence. Holes been cut in the outer glass. Blood was found on the floor in 2 spots, both appear to be puddles of a few drops. 1 drop of blood, puddle of blood. Huh. That's non-maleficence. Tools. Electric drill, missing its drill bit. Old TV remote. Glass cutter for cutting the holes. Old TV remote. Electric drill. So... 1 glass hole was in the display room. The other glass room was above non-maleficence. While later on, Mariko went up autonomy and came back out here. The whole thing freaking rotated, Danganronpa 2 style. Locked room. This Holden was poisoned, and that's the reason she collapsed. If we assume that, then it's clear I never fired my gun at her. In other words, the gunshot we heard came from the TV, just as I thought. It's all part of a trick to set me up as the apparent shooter. Cool story. Now, correct me if I'm totally wrong on this, but this TV was turned on by complete accident, no? Unless you're saying the kid was in on it. It's true that it ended up being turned on like that, but no, I don't think that was a part of your plan. It's still a very obvious clue that you meant to manipulate the TV, though. There's a remote. Not too long ago, we discovered where the proper remote went. Somebody else dropped that. I know nothing. There's really nobody else. This Holden had no reason to use a remote in her plan. She was in the room herself. You intended to play a gunshot on the TV at some point. Mariko simply happened to get the drop on you. All of this was preparation so you could fire the real shot. Brings us to the question of how that shot was fired from outside the room. As the poison would have already been on the knife. Must have been another reason you still had to go downstairs. Come to think of it, isn't his explanation for getting there kind of odd anyway? I mean, it's hard to judge whether Mrs. Holden would have let him ride the elevator with her. Why would she go back upstairs without him, when he has no way to get back himself? Something's off. Miss Chase, how do you propose the culprit shot Mrs. Holden, then? How could he have done that from the lower floor? It seems impossible. That's the neat part, I didn't. All I did was search for evidence like she instructed me to. Don't take it from me. No holes were found on the ceiling or anything. That slog of investigation confirmed it. I get the point. You claim that you couldn't have shot her because of that, but what if I can show that? Alright, next up. Oh wait, I forgot I still have this up. Alright, so we see this already. The obvious thing seems like Dr. Hellinger might have missed them because she didn't check the secret room. Is incorrect. I think it's likely Dr. Hellinger might have missed them. Ah, yeah, of course. The results are only reliable when it's convenient for you. I figured simply saying that wouldn't be enough. Consider this. There's a very good chance her investigation had a blind spot. Did we present non-maleficence? It's true that the detective thoroughly checked autonomy, justice, and beneficence. The same can't be said for the secret room. She only has the footage from her drone for that. Certainly. That could not have been as thorough in comparison. Hard to believe that anything about today wasn't overly thorough. If you want to be that way, maybe you should actually read the evidence descriptions. Last time I checked, the room placed below the study is clearly autonomy, no? The detective knew that. She was totally extra thorough with it. What room is really located below the study? There were already other assumptions about the lower floor that turned out wrong. Time to throw common sense out the window then, I guess. I'm absolutely up for it, but the court might not like it if you claim whatever you want. This isn't the internet. Proof that the floors may not be positioned the way we thought. Or at least someone gave us a piece of testimony that suggests the lower floor was misaligned. It was Mariko who said she went up. Yeah, that was one of the points of Mariko's testimony. She said she went up the vents in... I'm blanking out on my thoughts from a minute or two. In autonomy and went up at the study. But the bullet holes. That was the piece of evidence whose relevance perplexed me at the time. The bullet holes in autonomy were misaligned from the direction that she supposedly went. Mariko stated that the room she found herself in, autonomy, was located to the east. It still doesn't match our layout. Well, crap. Can't argue with the best witness of all time. Clearly the kid always knows what she's talking about. What she said turned out truthful once we deciphered it. You can't just dismiss her. Want to bet I can? Got the stuff here. Let's see. You know for a fact those little holes didn't go all the way to the lower floor. You should forget, this got confirmed to you before you all went and picked me up. Dr. Hellinger would have said something if that was an option. We don't necessarily know that. No, what he says is correct. My scans approximate a depth of 15 centimeters, which is not enough to reach the lower floor. There's still a fair amount of solid wall below that. No signs suggesting the holes originally continued beyond that point were present. Right, I remember something like that. Oh, shush. The atrociousness of your so-called theory doesn't end with merely that. If autonomy was eastwards, then that would position non-maleficence to the south. Even further away from the study. everything else adds up, I know he fired a shot through from the lower floor. How could he have gotten rid of the opening he shot through? Must be a way to explain this. Let's look at this again. Certain tool. Room move. I feel like we're heading towards the room moving, but... Let's see. Removed? Moved? In what way could it have moved? Flipped, descended, revolved. A new hole in the floor had opened. I fell into a cave full of ears. It was still down there when this guy found it. That means they never went back up. How the heck did they get off the platform? You've seen those eyes, unnerving on their own. People are around here. People around here have seen it. Something's alive in that place. Some say they saw it blink. Others say the people's moved, watching them. And that's the final piece, the true nature of this place. I thought it was weird when you talked about how Mrs. Holden just left you downstairs. She never took you to the lower floor in the first place, didn't she? She had no idea you were there. You're right. I do, in fact, possess the powers of teleportation. No need for that. There was a much simpler way. Even brought a tool along for that purpose. Wasn't that to dispose of the evidence? That was a convenient side effect, but not the main purpose. To boldly jump down on the cleaning platform through the hole in the window. Its height had been aligned with the lower floor. Did what? The real question is, how did the platform end up down there in the first place? What happened to the person on it? There would be no reason to climb up. It's less convenient than simply raising the platform. Unless, of course, you were already on the floor you're meaning to enter. Last time I ran against a glass wall, I sadly didn't phase through it. Too late to try and make a point sound ridiculous. No, the witness didn't see any hole in the window there. Because the hole had moved away. Doesn't sound like something that holes normally do. Patently correct. Okay, Lion. I think it's best if we have someone take you to a nice, padded room. To be accurate, it's not merely the hole that moved. It's the entire lower floor that rotated. What in the world? Is something like that even possible? Very much so, Your Honor. It's not really an uncommon feature in towers like this one. We sometimes have a rotating floor for things like panorama restaurants. Given that this tower was originally planned to be part of an amusement park. Okay, that's the logical reasoning why that's not insane. Mechanisms like this are even more likely. According to the locals, the tower's uncanny eyes sometimes turn to look at people. Perhaps there's something to it. Rumors? That's the apex of your evidence. There's also Mariko's testimony again. How come she suddenly spotted a passage in the vents that wasn't there during her first visit? It makes sense that the vents aren't always lined up due to the movement of the lower floor. How did she fall down into a vent that adjacent to the study in the north, yet end up in a room to the east? If Mariko wasn't moved herself, that only leaves the room itself moving while she recovered. And you mean to say that this witness shot through such a hole in the ceiling? Thought it was below the hole in the study floor. Exactly. It's also how he was able to fill up and cover the holes later. He simply did so from below, rather than the top. Very fascinating. But why even entertain this when the rifling marks still clearly show I did no such thing? Fine. If you want me to address that first, let's talk about how you got my rifling marks on the bullet next. Yes, that's an excellent question. Ask your tech support over there. What is not simply fake rifling marks? Can't copy-paste a gun. There will always be differences under a microscope. Before we talk about how you did it, we have to talk about how you even got a hold on my gun. As far as I can see it, there's only one realistic point of interaction. Alright, before or after? After. The point of the swap is to make it seem like I fired the bullet. You need to swap the real murder weapon with my gun to accomplish that. This largely would have had to have happened after using it in the murder. That's great! I get a tidbit of logic for you, too. Mr. Nealon seized your gun right after the crime, and he handed it over to the detective for testing. Meanwhile, I was still stuck downstairs. How could I have swapped anything? That might have been tricky, but... what if you didn't have to swap the gun to get the intended result? Really now, then what did I do? You could have swapped the bullet or the body. Has to be the body, right? What, I had a clone of Mrs. Holden handy? Oh, that's not what I thought. You get 0 points, Lie. It had to be the gun I swapped, or it's simply pointless. I had no chance to get a matching bullet from anywhere else. By your admission, I had no access to the one thing I needed to even consider framing you. Well? At least you tried to come up with an excuse. I'll give you some credit for that. Oh. You lost me in the logic there, Mrs. Chase. You they have an explanation? Uh-oh. Thanks for the top again. Found the rifle marks, okay. Alright, before the murder, I handed off my gun immediately after the incident. Yeah, because I don't think after the murder is gonna fly. You would have no chance to do anything with it then. It means you got your hands on it at some point before the murder. Missed opportunity being, of course, my visit to Dr. Campney. Couldn't really keep tabs on my stuff while on the dentist's chair. Okay, sure, and then? That would have accomplished about as much as the average New Year's resolution. Have to return the gun before the end of your appointment, or you'd notice. Can't really go and commit the murder with it during that time. A bit too early. Yes, it does prevent this straightforward approach. However, there's still a way that you could have gotten what you needed out of this chance. The key here is that you... Perfect copy sounds a bit patently absurd. Stealing a gun would be kind of pointless without, I guess we'll say fired and see where it goes. Problem is simple. You need to make it look like my gun killed her, but you couldn't just keep my weapon. The solution to that isn't complicated. We can't keep the gun. I just fire it then and there. Just in the middle of the dentist office. Are you sure Mrs. Holden was still alive the next day? Don't even try to pretend you didn't get what I meant. You didn't shoot at the victim then, but you did shoot to get a matching bullet. Ah. How do you figure that played out exactly? Talk about an office in the middle of the city here. Oh, I guess I just drove to the nearest shooting range and back in the middle of my job. Makes perfect sense. Perhaps there's a soundproof room nearby. Ah, yes, a soundproof room to drown out the screams. Just dentist things. I did all of that and still had enough time to slip the key into your mouth. Sure. I'll clarify. Okay, this is getting... way early with another gun. Well, there's one answer here that's more absurd than the other ones. We'll go with the less absurd option. You didn't fire any shots in the office. I'll admit that's a bit much to get away with. It doesn't stop you from returning a gun to be what you already fired, though. All it had to be was an identical gun you fired at some point. When you were alone. Your solution to the gun problem is to add more guns. God bless America. That's no good, though. I know the cops don't have the best rep, but they're still decent at looking up basic stuff. I'd have fooled you with an identical gun, but what happens once they check the serial number and trace the origin? Well, there are no police in this place. We gotta get involved the moment we step out of here. You're saying I'm part of JP? If that was really true, there'd be no way I would half-ass things like that. Maybe that's... He's right. I don't think he'd leave such an obvious discrepancy. Seems that... I see it now. There's no reason for you to swap my gun entirely. You really need to exchange this part. Barrel, trigger, magazine. Barrel. Barrel is the part with the rifling marks. You'll need to swap it with the barrel of a gun you had matching bullets for. Can't rip off the barrel of a gun, that's impossible. Don't try to take me for a fool. Taking a gun apart is very possible. It doesn't take that long. Fine. Let's say I did what you said. I have some spent bullets with rifling marks now. Wow. Shame I couldn't have brought them here. Means I could have stuck them in her body or whatever. I don't see what would stop you from bringing one or two with you. Can you answer me a simple question? What are bullets made of again? Lead? No idea, honestly. We can agree it's some kind of metal, no? With a metal detector at the entrance, it should be very obvious if I brought any. The answer is no, by the way. Certainly, if the guard found any bullets on someone, that should have been suspicious enough to at least note down. Simple common sense right there. Hope you heard of that. How you got the bullets into the tower? Well, maybe Mrs. Holden helped you. Must have been quite the pinch. Hey there, want to smuggle these bullets in for me so I can murder you? Maybe you said something about how she needed them to sell the idea that I shot her. Good effort, but Mrs. Holden would have had easy access to your gun after stabbing you. She wanted to make it look like you fired a shot. This stunt would have been a complete waste of time for her. How? Must have been a way. I know you got that bullet into this tower somehow. I know that when someone says somehow, they have a phenomenal argument in court. None of those delusions of yours to rest, liar. My theory to work, you need to get a bullet with my rifling marks into this tower. Feels like deja vu. Except unlike Mariko, a bullet is made out of metal. Does that mean he really couldn't have gotten it in through the main entrance? Smuggle them through another way, or okay, smuggle the bullets themselves, or use another way to get the bullets in here. If you couldn't smuggle it past Mr. Guard, there was a way you could have gotten a bullet in here. What, I turn the bullet into gas as well? Might want to tuck your unhingedness back in. I'll have to get more explicit, I guess. Please don't. I don't have enough pills to bleach that from my memory. Gun? Wait, could this seriously be it? It's one obvious way to effectively get a bullet from point A to point B. You really went to insane lengths for this. That shouldn't surprise me by now. I already know you murdered innocent people, after all. I want to look out projection. Best look into a mirror before attempting to fire shots. Oh, it's good that you're bringing up firing shots. That pretty much sums up the trick you used here. One time, some dude approached the tower in a fishing boat and opened for what? Used a gun to fire the bullets. No better way to get them to a high place. You're in a place as high as the floors of this tower. Wait, seriously? Okay, that's not the direction I was thinking, but... I mean, probably safer than putting them in the gun. You have to elaborate, Miss Chase, because I'm very confused right now. If a bullet was fired high into the air, how would it be possible to retrieve it? I'm sure you were all wondering why the culprit went out of his way to bring a window cutter. Contrary to what you might have thought, it wasn't just to be able to get rid of evidence. An opening goes both ways. Could have been used to retrieve something from outside as well. Nice attempt, but no shot. Nothing outside to retrieve a bullet from. Use her brain. A handgun bullet would just bounce off the walls. Well, I'm sure you weren't aiming for it to get stuck in the structure of the building. Had to remain in a good enough condition to frame me with, that would have deformed it. There's likely something set up on the window cleaning platform to catch it, like, say, a sandbag. You retrieved the bullet from that and then emptied it into the ocean like everything else. I have no means of verbalizing how ill-conceived this theory is. How would anybody manage to accurately hit something at such high altitude? It's true it would have been. It's true it would have been a difficult shot to land, which is why it took a lot of tries. You could have used a scope and an aiming laser to increase his odds. All he had to do was hit his target once. He was clearly determined enough to do it. We've explained a lot, and yet we still keep finding new, insane, out-of-the-box things to bring up here. Out of arguments? About time. I'll summarize the order of events. We're still throwing enough out there with no concrete proof. That bit gets insane. Mr. Drill found a gun until he saw a bullet hit the target he had set up. He removed the barrel from that gun and swapped it with mine during the dentist visit. I'll just have a bullet with my rifling marks available to him here. It would have taken some effort, but it's very much possible. Cool. Let me try to follow you here. You said I shot a bullet up the tower and then fired it again. Don't even try to confuse me with that. I know what you're going to say. Yes, the bullet has already been fired. No, that doesn't mean it can't be fired again. As long as it's not too damaged, a bullet like this can be reinserted into a shell casing. There were several available in this gun. Same gun you then used to fire the shot. Fire the shot, she says. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this gun has its own rifling marks. Which, you know, destroys the whole idea. Second thought. Don't correct me. Same principle as before. You swapped... Okay, alright. Except this time you swapped it for one without any rifling. Probably wasn't even made out of metal to get it past the detector. We had to hold together for one shot anyways. The bullet still took some slight damage from all these steps. Which is why it wasn't a fully perfect match in the end. Oh, okay. This barrel. I threw it out like everything else. Obviously, that's the smart thing to do. Let me get this right. There's absolutely nothing that can prove your story. Wasn't that a shame? We'll have to throw it out the figurative window. There are some things that can be easily proven here. It shouldn't be too difficult to establish that the lower floor really is moving. Wow, the floor is moving! Give the girl a round of applause! Well, sure, your family will be proud of you. Can't say I really care for that pad, though. That shows it was possible for you to shoot the victim. Possible? Maybe. Likely? I don't know about that. I'd be a dentist, but that doesn't mean I'm automatically responsible for all holes. You got any proof I drilled those? Please, why else would anybody do that? Mr. Pulley literally saw you below the crime scene. Oh sure, he saw me there. Did he say anything about me firing at the ceiling, though? Yeah, I didn't think so. As for the holes, how about a simple construction error? Fact of the matter is, you can't even show when those holes were made. Could have been there for ages, for all we know. That ain't got nothing to do with me. One just happens to be right in the position to shoot at Mrs. Holden after her collapse. Come on. Oh, that's true, Miss Chase. Wouldn't it be rather odd if the witness made that the witness... Wouldn't it be rather odd that the witness made a second hole? That's a fair point, Your Honor. The lower floor really was rotating frequently. These holes could not have been drilled in much in advance by the witness. After all, there'd be no way to make sure where Mrs. Holden would collapse exactly. Whether this would be at a time the holes aligned. Thanks for pointing out some real facts and logic, Your Honor. Let's be real. There's no way I could get away with doing any of that. You folks were all literally at the scene. You ever heard someone drill through a wall? It's a real blessing on the ears, makes them bleed tears of joy. You wouldn't forget such a profound experience, I assure you. God damn it. I knew everything this man did, every step of his plan. Why does it still look like he's gonna get away with it? Lily to the rescue?